All right, today we're diving deep into the history of Ethiopia's Wolaita people to explore two kings who are just worlds apart. They represent the absolute extremes of power, one a revered saint, the other a terrifying tyrant, and their stories tell us so much about what it means to lead.
That question is really at the heart of the Wolaita kingdom's memory. Its entire history was shaped by these two unforgettable leaders, polar opposites who show us how the very same power can be used to build a nation or to tear it right down to its foundations.
Okay, so let's get into it. To really understand the incredible impact these two kings had, we first have to get a feel for the land they ruled and, more importantly, the sacred role a king was supposed to play. See, in Wolaita tradition, the king wasn't just some politician or a military leader. Oh no, he was the living, breathing connection to the spiritual world. His actions, his judgments, even his personal mood were thought to directly affect everything: the rain, the harvest, the health of the entire nation.
That was the deal. That was the sacred promise that came with the crown. The king was supposed to be the ultimate protector, the final word on justice. And you really need to hold on to that idea because it's what makes the story of our second king so unbelievably shocking.
So you have these two figures, centuries apart, and they're like perfect bookends for the whole concept of leadership. On one side, you have Modolomi, the archetype, a ruler who finds a higher power and transforms his kingdom for the better. And on the other, you have Damate, the aberration, a king who just embraced chaos and nearly destroyed everything.
Let's start with the saint, the semi-mystical King Modolomi. His story is way more than just a legend. It's basically the kingdom's origin story. It's the moment that bridges their ancient pagan past with their future Christian identity.
So picture this. Modolomi is this powerful pagan king. His authority is rooted in the old traditions, the old magic. And everything is humming along until a Christian missionary, the famous Saint Tekle Hamanot, shows up with one very specific goal: to convert this powerful king. And this whole conflict comes to a head in the most dramatic way possible: a literal trial by fire. The legend says Modolomi's magicians were so confident they just walked right into this huge bonfire, totally protected by their magic. But then Saint Tekle Hamanot steps up and simply starts to pray.
And with those words, everything changes. A power is unleashed that just dwarfs the old magic. The flames that were harmless a second ago suddenly roar to life and consume the magicians, while the saint just stands there, completely untouched. Modolomi had just witnessed a power way beyond his own.
So totally convinced, King Modolomi gets baptized. But this wasn't just a personal choice. This was a political and cultural earthquake for his kingdom. By embracing this new faith, he didn't just become a Christian king, he became this revered ancestral figure. He plugged the Wolaita people into the grand, sacred history of the wider Ethiopian empire. He gave them a whole new foundation.
Okay, so hold that image of the saintly founder in your mind. Now, let's fast forward a few hundred years to the 19th century and meet a king who is the exact opposite of everything Modolomi stood for. Meet King Damose. Get this, his reign was only 5 years long, but it was so chaotic, so terrifying, that it's remembered as the time of general legal uncertainty. Instead of bringing order, he brought constant fear, a complete and utter violation of his sacred duty.
And just look at the kind of stuff he did. He would literally cover himself in soot to sneak around at night and spy on his own subjects. If he overheard you complaining, executioners would be at your door the next morning. He would even interrogate little kids, trying to trick them into saying their parents were disloyal. It was pure systematic terror.
The whole idea of the king as a protector was flipped on its head. He became the biggest, most unpredictable threat in their lives. The source of justice was now the source of terror. He'd force them into these so-called insane wars, and if you refused, you'd be left for the vultures.
But this was the final straw. His final act of sacrilege was so profoundly taboo, so horrifying, that it was said to have shook heaven and earth. He tried to marry his own daughter. And with that, he didn't just break a law. He shattered the entire sacred bond between the people and their king.
So, at the end of the day, how do these two legacies really stack up? How do a saint and a tyrant end up shaping the collective memory of an entire kingdom?
I mean, this chart really spells it out, doesn't it? Modolomi's authority came from a spiritual transformation that built a lasting legacy. Damate's authority came from what people could only describe as being possessed, and all he created was chaos and a legacy of pure terror.
And that's exactly how they're remembered.
Motosolmi became this powerful symbol of a noble origin, a connection to a higher purpose. But Damate, he became the ultimate cautionary tale, a terrible memory of what happens when the sacred trust of leadership is completely betrayed. And here's the kicker. The people he terrorized finally did something that was considered almost unthinkable. They broke their sacred, unbreakable oath of loyalty. They rose up, they overthrew him, and they locked him away for the rest of his life. The power he abused so terribly was taken away by the very people he was meant to protect.
So it leaves us with this huge question, right? Who leaves a deeper mark? The one who builds or the one who breaks? The story of the Wolaita seems to suggest that while you remember both, the memory of justice is what you build on, while the memory of tyranny serves as the warning. And maybe, just maybe, that warning is every bit as vital as the foundation itself.